like to welcome you to this discussion of the CNX80. This is a product from Garmin AT, who purchased the UPS CNX80 from the Apollo Corporation early in 2004. And this was their first market entry for UPS AT in WAS certified GPS. And Garmin is now the producer of this particular unit. And there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about today. Similarities, differences if you will, between the Garmin unit and the Garmin 430, 530, and possibly the KLN94, which is a unit that you may also be familiar with. Today we're going to break the discussion down into 5 areas, or 4 areas if you will. The first area over here is going to be the dedicated buttons over here, the COM side of the house. These are dedicated buttons over here. Then we're going to take a look at the function keys that work around here, and associated with each function key is a button called a soft key. So these buttons here kind of work together to allow you to perform just a real multitude of functions. It's actually going to amaze you how many things that this particular box can do. Over on the far right hand side we have other dedicated buttons. We have the map button, the direct to button, the nearest button, the info button, and the clear button. These are all pretty straightforward. The clear button and the menu button are used to change and or acknowledge different items, different menus that you may pull up, things that you might want to change. The other way to get information into this particular unit is to use the large button knob here and a small knob here, and we actually have a push on, push off cursor button right here, which you'll use in a couple of instances to help change some of the items that you may want to adjust in the box. We're going to start the discussion off by looking at the controls. Up here we have the power and the volume control. Here we have the database card over on this particular side here, on the left hand side. This is the one that you would update every 28 days with the cycle in order to use the box for approach use in the National Airspace System. Down here we have another item that's kind of unique. This is the photo cell, and this automatically adjusts for the brightness of the display. We have the photo cell disabled for videotaping purposes because it's difficult to see everything that we want to see, but we'll show you where that's adjusted in the systems menu in a second. Up here is another neat feature that the unit has. This is an infrared port. The infrared port allows you to do your flight planning at home with software that they provide, and then come to the airplane with your Palm or other infrared device and basically beam your flight plan information into the CNX80 directly, so that you don't have to sit at the airplane and program it. So that's also kind of a nice, interesting feature that the box has. Key. As you look on the left-hand side of the display over here, you'll see that we've got a little line here that attaches to a square right here. That's the COM box. Down here we have one that's attached to the VOR box. We have another smaller box here, which is the transponder control box, and then we have the CDI right here. Below the CDI we have an indicator that tells us whether we are in GPS or in localizer mode, VOR mode, or whether we're in terminal or approach mode. So that's the way the display works. To activate the COM function, if it's not already done, you press on the COM button. When you do that, you'll see the standby frequency highlighted in reverse, and you'll also see the little window around the box that's attached to the thing pulsate. So it pulsates on and off, just to kind of give you an idea of which function you actually have activated. In its simplest form, if we want to change the frequency, we can come over to the large and small knob and change it just like we did any other communications receiver. Then down here, a little bit different, you have a flip-flop box right here, and with that you can change it from the standby to the active mode. There's 3 other buttons down here that come into effect. Okay, these buttons are the squelch, the monitor function, and the recall function. The squelch function works just like any other test function works in a communications receiver. When you adjust it or activate the squelch, that allows the static or the background to come in, and you can actually see, when you adjust the volume up here, a little window that tells you that you're on the COM, and that tells you the approximate setting of the volume control. So that's kind of handy to make sure that you've got the volume set where you want it to be set. The next function over here is the recall function. And the recall function stores the last 10 or so COM frequencies that you've used. and it puts it in a little volatile memory. And you can take the large knob here and move it up and down the frequency list, and when you find something that you like, you can load it either into the standby, which I'll do now, and you saw the frequency go over there, or the other one is I can put it in the active. So I could go to, let's see, here's 19025, which is the double eagle AWAS, and I can actually move that directly to the active. So when you go to the recall list, you can decide which frequency you want and whether you want to make it the active or the standby frequency. Once you've done that, the little flip-flop soft button down here is active, and you can swap them back and forth. So that's kind of a neat way to do it. The radio also has what I refer to as a really fantastic function, and that's the monitor function. And what the monitor function does is when you turn this on, you'll see the little ID over here change from standby to monitor. It's a little hard to see, but as I toggle it on and off, there's a standby and there's a monitor. When you've activated the monitor function, what this does, assuming that you're only listening to one radio, is it allows audio from the monitored frequency, the one in standby, to be fed to the audio system, as long as there's no activity on the primary system. And this is kind of handy. Let's assume that in this scenario you're working with Albuquerque approach, and you're setting up for an approach into Double Eagle, and you're talking to them, and you'd like to listen to the AWAS. But many times you've done that, and you're sitting there and you're listening to the AWAS, and approach talks at the same time, and it all turns into a bunch of noise. You miss a call or something like that. With this function, the standby frequency only comes through when there is no activity on the active frequency. So if approach calls you while you're copying the ATIS or the AWAS, then that would be silenced and you'd only hear the ATC call. So that's really kind of a nice function, especially if you're dealing with one radio and you don't want to sit there and tune a couple of different radios at the same time. So that's a really handy function. So we've got squelch over here, we've got the monitor function, which we can toggle on and off, and we have the recall. One of the other interesting things that you can do with the recall is you can go straight to the emergency frequency, and that will put 120.15 directly into the standby frequency for you. The other last function there is in recall, you can actually program some frequencies in there that you might want to use, or something that you use a lot and you want to go back to that. In this particular box, there haven't been any recall frequencies or any frequencies placed or programmed into that particular list. So that one's blank. So that's the communication side. Now, if we continue, we come down to the VOR side. And the VOR side is very similar to the COM side. And when I push the VOR side, you'll see the window or the box starts to pulsate. You'll also see that I have the ability down here to change the frequency, just like I would any other VOR receiver. And I also have the ability to flip-flop the receiver back and forth if that's what I'd like to do. Alright, now this one also has a couple of neat features associated with it. If you come down here, you'll see a distance, and this is the distance to the active VOR, 59.6. This is GPS distance. Obviously, we do not have a DME transceiver or DME unit in this particular box. And then down at the bottom, you'll see that this is labeled as standby. We can go through here just like we did with the test function. We have an ID function here where we would identify the Morse code identifier for the unit. Okay. We also have a recall function just like we did with the COM, and we have the ability to go with the recent list or with the user list, which isn't programmed at the moment. So I could come up here and put the ILS frequency for Double Eagle, and I might want to put that in the active, so I can go directly to that and put it in the active frequency if that's what I would like to do. So it works very similar to the COM side of the house. We have the flip-flop, okay, and we have a recall, and we have the identifier. What's a little bit different on this box, we also have a monitor function, but when we depress the monitor function, what it does is it's going to give us the radio off of the standby receiver. So to set up a scenario where that might be worth something to you, let's just say I've got in the recall list, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go 111, I think it's 111.5 would be the ILS frequency over there at International, and then 113.2, I can tune it in like this, or I could go to the recall list, and we have that in the standby. Well, you don't have a distance reading off of a localizer. However, if I go to the monitor function, what will show up, or what's supposed to show up in the airplane, is the radial from. So if you were going to use TEXA, or identify TEXA using the radial off of the Albuquerque VOR, it is supposed to actually show up in there. Okay. One of the things I didn't talk about is the VOR function here, and I can come up on the menu and I can actually do a test log up here. If I hit the edit button, I can come in here and change the date, put the type of test in here, and put the name in there, and so on. Okay. But that's one of the other cool little features that you can do that might be worthwhile to show you folks. There's a remote transponder that you can hook up to this box, and when you press transponder, you can go in here and you can change the transponder code using the two knobs right here. Okay. You can identify or hit the ident button if you'd like to. You can go standby, on, or altitude. And I believe there's an option in the interface to have the box turn itself on at a predetermined speed, so you might run into that as well. There's another way that you can enter the transponder code, and that is by turning the back knob. What happens is these buttons, these soft keys, become direct entry keys for it. So if I wanted to put in 0, 2, 2, 4, I could do that, and that when you entered a complete code, it takes you back. You would ident or put it to altitude, as the case may be, and that's all there really is to that. The CDI down here, this is what is selected between localizer and GPS. A little hard to read here, but a little green GPS there. In this particular indicator, the airplane is the center, and the white arrow, or actually it is a to from flag, is what's going to move left or right. And the arrow at the bottom will tell you whether or not you're left or right. In this case, we would have to go to the left 2/100ths of a mile to get the course centered again. This is the suspend button. This is the same button that you have on the Garmin's, and the OBS button that you have on the King. And what this does is this stops your waypoint sequencing. Instead of going from one point to the next point, whatever point is the active waypoint at that time is what's going to stay the active waypoint, and it will be just like a VOR with a to from flag and course information, and usually the HSI is interfaced with that, so you can select the course that you're looking for. So that's the way that one works. So those are the 4 buttons on this side, and a kind of a discussion on what happens over here. Okay? The next series of buttons that we want to look at are the function buttons. And the function buttons change depending on which layer, if you will, which chapter that you're in. This is the baseline. We have a message, a procedure, a flight plan, and a timer. The second level, we have a pan function, a checklist function, a user function for user waypoints, and a system function. And we also have a parallel track function. And then, because we're in, you can see here we're in simulator mode, there should also be a simulator function as well. We'll get back to the map page and go to simulator. There we go. And this gives me automatic tracking that allows me to establish my position and gives me the speed that I want to have it at. And right now I've got the speed set to 0 so that we don't fly halfway across the planet while we're setting this up. Okay, so we're going to continue here and go through the separate functions, or the different functions, and we're going to start with the message function. You know you have a message when you see this little white square right here with the M in it. When you see that, you select the message function. In this case, we don't have any new messages. However, we do have an old message, and that's because the GPS doesn't have an encoder hooked to it, and so it's not very happy about that. It's having a little trouble with its altitude input, but that's what that is. To escape or to get out of the message window, what you need to do is come up here. The escape key for most of the functions here is the map key, just like it's the range key on the Garmin and the clear key, or the range key on the King and the clear key on the Garmin. So you reach up and tap the map button, and that'll take you back to it. When you get a message, it'll flash, and it will keep all the old messages in abeyance or in memory. The next one is the procedure button, and we don't really have any programs loaded right now, but if we were going to a particular airport, and we will do that later on in the presentation, it will show you what approaches and arrivals are available, and it would allow you to execute it. We don't have that, so we're going to go to the map button and we'll put it back. The next one is the flight plan. It displays the active flight plan, and we just have a little one sitting here right now. And there's no option here, and this is one of the pitfalls on this box, there's no option to go to the new flight plan. It doesn't say new flight plan here on the back button, but that's what you need to go to in order to go to a new one. And when you do that, then you can get to the new flight plan. So for instance, if I wanted to do a new flight plan, I'm going to put in a short one here just to get something going. I'm going to go from Albuquerque, or Double Eagle, ABQ, just to kind of give us a reference of what we're doing. I'm going to hit enter. When I do that, this little word up here that says origin is going to change to destination, and there it is. And I'm going to go set this up to Santa Fe just to put something in there to work with. And there it is, Santa Fe, and that gives me the arrival destination. And in this case, I'm going to execute it. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so we now have a flight plan, and apparently we have a message. So I'm going to go back to the map, and it says we have a discontinuity. Discontinuity is just a short term for disconnect. All right, and discontinuity is used a lot in the flight planning function. It doesn't mean that we're going down to the disco for 70s dancing. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that message, and I'm going to go back to the flight plan, and I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to get rid of the discontinuity, which I've done, and I'll execute that, and that should make it a lot happier. It just says that we need to fly. The title up here is the flight plan, and that it's 26 degrees and 43 miles. Again, we're not moving, but that's just to give us something to do. Okay. Now if I go to the procedure button, it'll come up here, and it'll say that I originated at Albuquerque and that I'm going to Santa Fe, and if I wanted to load an approach, I could come here. We'll talk about these functions just a little and go back to the functions. So when you press flight plan, you've got an active flight plan, and this is what we call flight plan 0 and everything else. This is the flight plan if you have the autopilot that's currently flying the airplane. And you can't really do anything to that without going into the edit function. All right. If I wanted to do another new flight plan, I could do it right there. But right now, back to the map, and it's just showing me the course information. So far, so good. The next button over here, function key, or what we like to refer to as a soft key, because the functions here change depending on where you are. And so when I press this button, that's the timer key, and I'll bring that up. And I have a plethora of different clocks here. I have 1-minute timers and 2-minute timers and distance and up and down count and all that other stuff that you can mess with. So I could come down here and display it or not. I'll put it on the map, do a bunch of other things. Trigger time on the clock itself, when does it start? So if you wanted to have a departure time, it would trip that also. So that's the timer. So I'll come back here and I'll just hit my 1-minute timer and then go back to my map. So that's the timer function. If I go one more level down, I have a pan function, and the pan function works a lot like the one in the Garmin 430 and 530, where I can move around to a different spot, if you will, and this will tell me the bearing and the distance to whatever spot that I happen to have up there, whether it be an intersection or something like that. But that's how you would do that, and I think you can mark this and use that as a user waypoint. All right, back to the map and back to the checklist. Now, this particular GPS has the ability to enter a number of checklists, like 20 checklists or something like that, with 20 levels or something like that. And you would go in and put in a new one and make a new list and then go to the menu, do it like that. And when you do that, after you put it in, you'll have to go to the book to figure out how to put the checklist in specifically. When you call checklist up, it would give you one, and you could go through with the enter key and confirm each action in the checklist and keep track of it that way, if that's the kind of checklist that you want to use. We do have a message here, and the message says that our countdown timer is expired. So that's the way that works. So that's the timer. We've talked about pan, and the only way to get rid of this is to come up here on the map page. We've talked about pan, we've talked about checklists. These are user waypoints. You can put anything in here that you'd like. You can name it anything that you'd like. You can put in the latitude, longitude. If you want a frequency in there, you can do that. You can put a VOR in there if you want as a reference waypoint, and create just about any waypoint that you want to. And that'll be stored in the user waypoints. Okay. All right. System. System is where we can adjust different things. This is the GPS, and there's no position fix because it's on the simulator. Here's the version of the software. Gives you the serial number, the airborne software number, the display software, and so on. All the different software editions are right here. And the transponder if you have that hooked up. Okay? On the configure, this is where we set things like whether we want it in inches or millibars, whether we want the magnetic variation to be constant, distance to be in nautical miles or kilometers or whatever, altitude in feet or meters, what kind of fuel we're talking about, fuel units, how many gallons constitute full for this particular airplane. Down here you can see that we have the brightness set for manual so that you can read it on the camera. So you can go through and change any one of these that you'd like to. I think you turn the cursor on, and then you can change it. I could change it to statute or nautical or kilometers, but I think I'll leave it right where it is for the present time, and I'll turn it off. So that's where you do the configuration of the GPS. Okay, now as we continue, we have system, and then we have parallel track. If you have a course and you decide that you want to offset that course, this is where you would do it. You can go to it and let's see, come down here and decide whether you want to be 10 miles off or right or left or 3 miles, and go in there and select whichever function or whichever offset that you like, and then you go up to the status and activate it. Okay. So anyway, we're not going to do parallel track. That's where you would activate it right there, but we're not going to do that right now. So back to the map. And then the last function down here is the automatic track. On there, we're just going to exit because we're already in automatic. Here's where you put the present position, and over here is where you put the speed. And right now, speed is 0, so that we can go through and explain the rest of the buttons. Okay. Back to the map. So to review, when we go in here, these are kind of these are on the function bank, and these will activate soft keys over here on the right hand side, which present you with different functions depending on which function that you're in. So it's not like a single button, single function kind of a radio. So you really have to get familiar with it and kind of learn what things are going to pop up when you want them to. So we move along now, we're going to come over to this side. We already talked about the menu and the enter key. The next one is the map key. What we are looking at here is map page 1, and this actually tells me what the scale is. The reason it says 1 is because we have the option of setting up 4 different maps. The map number 1 is the one that you come back to as a baseline if you exit out of another function or hit the map key twice. So if I had picked another map, and the way you do that is with the big knob. So there's map number 2, there's map number 3, I'm using the big knob back here, and there's map number 4. So you have 4 different maps. Because this is the one that comes back as the default most of the time, this is the one you want to think about when you go to set up, because that's what's going to be there most of the time. Up here on the left these are constant fields. This is the distance to your waypoint. Okay. Over here is the bearing to the waypoint, and this constantly updates. Over here is your estimated time en route to the next waypoint, and over here is ground speed in whatever knots or statute miles or whatever you did. This one's in knots, obviously. And down here at the bottom, it shows your flight plan. And the flight plan that we have is Albuquerque to Santa Fe. And as you'll see a little bit later on, if there's a next waypoint, then the next one will be displayed over here. The scale of the map is adjusted with the little knob. So right there is 5 nautical, 10 nautical, 15 nautical, and it moved very quickly. So you can adjust the scale. If you bring it down far enough, it will actually go into automatic, and it turns green up there, and the map will scale to the next waypoint, so that the next waypoint always remains on the screen. although it's kind of a handy feature when you're in close for approaches. If you're in a 2-point flight plan, what that means is if your next place is 300 miles away, then the map is going to go out and show you that next waypoint. So a lot of folks like to set the map, the main map page, down to something that maybe they're going to be in 10 minutes, like 20 nautical miles, and that'll show what's going to be within range in the next 10 minutes, or you might want to do something like 15. It depends. It's all personal taste, and the customer is going to do that. You can also, in the map mode, figure out what you want displayed on the map. So in map number 1, I punch the menu button up here, and it offers me a selection. Now, a lot of these buttons are on and off, and a lot of these buttons are 3-function buttons. What I mean is, right here I've got airports, and as you can see, I've got Albuquerque. And by the way, these dotted lines that are extending are runway headings. So you see all of these here. Now, when I do this, I can turn off the airport identifier, or I can turn off the airport. Okay? And it looks like we still have the airport identifier up, but that's because it's one of the waypoints in our flight plan, and we do have the flight plan showing. So there's Albuquerque, the VOR. So let me see if Double Eagle. There's Double Eagle. See how Double Eagle popped back in right there? So now I have the airport location and identifier up here. All right. I have the VOR up here. If I turn it one time, I see the symbol for the airport, but the identifier is gone. And if I take it off one more time, then the airport actually goes away. And the only thing that remains are waypoints that are in your active flight plan at that point. I have the same choices over here with the VOR. I can take the identifier off, as you saw there, or I can take the VOR off as well. Or I can leave them both. And I can do the same thing with the NDVs. You saw Isleta. Okay, down here in the bottom there's Isleta, and there's the outer marker for the ILS-22 Double Eagle. So you can leave those on. If they are in your flight plan, or part of the active flight plan, they're going to be displayed anyway. Alright, so I'm going to leave the NDVs off because they're going to be in the flight plan if I decide to use them. Intersections, again, you can turn them all on with their identifiers, or you can just leave them on, or you can get rid of them altogether. There's a lot of intersections, and so my personal preference is to turn off the intersections on the base map, because any intersection that I intend to use in my flight will be displayed anyway, so it'll be available for me on the map. You've got more choices here. You can put in your user waypoints. You can turn off the airspace, like the Albuquerque Class C airspace. You can turn it on and off. Okay. All right, so that's it there. You can turn the airways on and off, low and high. I'm going to get rid of those because that gets a little busy. And you can also, there's also an automatic decluttering function. As the scale goes down, it'll dump out the stuff, dump out some of the stuff when it gets too busy. So now we're going back to the main menu. So this is your baseline map. And when you see that, you're going to have the map over here with the 4 dedicated functions, and then you'll have your COM and your nav and your transponder and your CDI. Now, there are 3 other maps. So I'm going to move over here to map number 2. Now, map number 2, we have all the same choices on map number 2 that we had on map number 1, plus we've got some additional stuff. So I can go through here and do the turn on the intersections and the airports and like that, and the airways and so on. And then flight plan, the flight plan is the actual track, and declutter. And then I get over here and I have a thing called nav data. Now, I don't know if you caught that, but when I went off the map, number 1 map over here, when I moved off to map 2, all that stuff went away except the CDI. All right? And what I have here is an option now, is I can select the data that I want. Oops, sorry. Let me get back to the right map. I can select the data that appears over here. Now, I would advise you to think about the things that don't go away. You're going to have your distance, your bearing, your time, and your speed here anyway, and those are constant fields. Over here, they're also available if you'd like them there. And so as you see up here in the upper left-hand corner, I have desired track. Now, it's highlighted because I said hit the select data button, and I can sit there and I can go between a number of different things. Fuel flow, fuel remaining, fuel to waypoint, GPS altitude, GPS vertical speed, ground speed, which is already here, heading, which is already up here on the top, a minimum safe altitude, my true airspeed in knots, TKE, and I'm not sure what that one is. Then we have track, and then we have our UTC time that I can see up there. We have wind, this wheel, cross-track error, altitude, bearing, which is already up there, destination, estimated time of arrival, estimated time en route, destination fuel remaining, fuel to destination distance, distance to destination, desired track. So you can go through and customize this any way that you want. And as you go down, you've got all of these here. This is not a bad setup here. Desired track is one I like to have versus my actual track. Estimated time of arrival at my waypoint, estimated time of arrival at my destination, GPS altitude, the time, that's also a nice one. And you can set all of these. And when you're done with all that, it stays there. Now, you can set these differently for the different maps. So not only do you have what's displayed here, maps 2, 3, and 4, you can also change what's displayed over here. So map 2 has one set of information, map 3 has another set of information, and map 4 has another set of information. So you can customize that any way that you want. Some people would customize it for the en route environment. The way I've got the low airways in here right now, and so I can zoom in and out on that if I want to. Okay. But to me that's a little bit cluttered. And I've got map number 2, and I don't remember exactly what I have. I think it's very similar to map number 1. If you go to a function and you come back, for instance, if I go to message and I come back and I hit it one time, I get map number 3. If I hit it when map 3 is up, it takes me to map number 1. So if I had message up here and hit it twice, I go back to map number 1. And that's why I really encourage you to think about what you want to display on map 1, because you're probably going to end up there accidentally more often than not, even when you, or intentionally, as the case may be. So that's how the map is set up. Okay. Down here is our direct to function. There are some things about this that are kind of interesting and a little tricky at the same time. When you press the direct to function, the direct to function brings you up into your current flight plan. And as you can see right here, we've got Albuquerque to Santa Fe and Albuquerque in the bearing of 26 degrees. All right. You can select with the knob here any of these waypoints and go direct. Now, the thing that's interesting here is that's not all. You don't just hit direct again and enter. You have to make a choice on whether you want to go direct to that waypoint and leave everything here where it is, whether you go to that waypoint and hold, whether you want to go to that waypoint as a destination, whether you want to fly a leg. Okay, and then there's some more functions over here, course to and course from, and the OBS mode as well. Very frustrating, because typically you'll go direct to and you'll see something highlighted and you go direct to. It doesn't do anything. Okay, so you have to physically come in here and say, I want to go direct to that waypoint. And because it's in the active flight plan, it'll give you present position now, direct to that particular waypoint, and that part works good. If I go direct to again, I'd have to say, let's say I wanted to go to the waypoint and hold. Okay, if I go, whoops, now see here, I hit by accident, I hit destination. And it says, do you want me to erase the old flight plan and replace it with the new one? In this case, I don't want to do that. All right, I can select fly the leg if I wanted to, based on the leg between the last two waypoints. Or I can go to hold, and it'll give me a number of options here as far as how I would like to hold, and as far as whether I want right turns, what my bearing to it would be, what my distance on the hold would be, and it will actually plot this on the map for you to see, and it'll actually prompt you for the proper holding entry. Go back to the map here. The other thing that you want, let's say you want to go someplace that's outside of the current flight plan, you hit direct to, and down here you have to move over. These are waypoints in the current flight plan. This is the database. So when you get to the database, you can come over here and enter any waypoint identifier that you want. So I can go in here and go double eagle if I wanted to do that. Okay, and so there's double eagle. So now I have to decide, do I want to go direct to double eagle? Do I want to go to double eagle and hold? Or do I want to change double eagle as the destination? So if I want to go direct, there we go. I'm now present position, direct to double eagle. If I wanted to go direct to double eagle and hold, it will offer me those choices. And then it'll draw me a holding pattern right there based on what was entered in there as far as bearing distance and track. Now, if I go back here in view, I still have my original flight plan in there. What I've done is I've kind of broken away from that to go do something else. If I want to go to direct to double eagle as a waypoint, okay, but this time I want to change it to the destination. It asks me, it prompts me, do I really want to replace it with what's in there with what I'm doing? And if I say yes, then now I have a new destination, present position, direct to double eagle. So that's how the direct to button works. The big problem people have with this is picking these 3 points, deciding what you're going to do over here. Because you can sit there and say, I want to go to a waypoint, and if you just hit direct to or hit enter, nothing happens. And that's what typically happens is somebody goes, I want to go direct, I want to go direct to there, and they hit enter, and it doesn't do anything. So just remember that one extra step that has to be in there when you use the direct to function. One of the other really cool things that this has is a nearest function. And nearest assumes that you want the nearest airport. And it will present a list of the nearest airports. I think we go to the nearest 20 airports right there. And you notice that they're highlighted. And I can change, or I can do a direct to with any of these that I would like to. And I can also load the frequencies into the standby or the active. So here's Los Alamos. If I wanted to load the Los Alamos frequency on my COM side, standby, I'd hit that, and sure enough, it dumps it up there. If I want to go direct to Los Alamos, I'm again presented with my choices: direct, just go direct, not really mess with the current flight plan, hold, or make it my new destination. All right. So in this case, I'm just going to clear to get out of here, and it doesn't work, so I have to go back to my map page, and I'm back to where I was before, present position, direct to double eagle. The nearest function also gives you the nearest VORs and DBs, intersections. Hit the more, you've got user waypoints, you've got airspace, you've got flight service, you've got center, okay, and some other stuff in here as well. So you just select what you want, and let's just say you wanted to go down and find out about Echo 98 before you went there. That's what the next button does. The info button on a highlighted item will present you all of the information about that particular waypoint. And notice that when we did that, our soft keys changed their functions as well. Let me go back and do that one more time. Go back to the map. I'm going to go to nearest. I'm going to go down to Echo 98. I'm going to hit the info key. And now I have another selection, another set of keys up here. I can get the frequencies if I want, if there are any frequencies assigned to it. I can get a map. I can look at its position. Okay, I can look at the sunrise and sunset for that particular airport, or I can look at the airport elevation and so on. And we can look at the runways, and that tells you what the length of the runways is, and so on. So a very, very powerful key indeed. All right, so that takes us through the map key, the direct to key, the nearest key, the info key. We know what these two are, the clear are. We know what the two knobs do for us, and the cursor. Turn it on and off. We've gone through and we've looked at all the function keys, and we've looked at the COM side as well. Time to move on now. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go using the function key. I'm going to go here to my speed button and track, and I'm going to basically give us a little bit of speed here. Okay, we'll make it 120. And I also need to raise the altitude. One thing you need to know about this particular box is it does see altitude. And one of the features of a WAS unit is it gives you guidance based on altitude as well. It's not hooked up to the glide slope. We don't have any WAS approved Category 1 approaches at this point in time. They're probably on the way. But the unit does drive the glide slope needle by virtue of the ILS, the unit that's in here as well. But we'll get a chance to demonstrate that here in just a second. All right, back to my main map. And what I have, I'm at 7,000 feet. And I'm talking to Albuquerque approach. And I think on the comm side of the house, I'll go ahead and put the AWAS in for Double Eagle, which was this one. I'll put that in the standby. That was fun. I'm going to come over here, change to the nav side, and I could either put the ILS in there if I plan to do that, but I'm not going to do that right now. I think I'm going to do a GPS approach, so I'm not going to worry about what's in my nav side right now. I'll just, I'll leave Albuquerque International up there by flip-flopping there, and it's loaded up there, and I get my mileage, and we're doing all right there. So back to the map page. Now, my current flight plan is present position direct to Double Eagle. And this might be something that you're doing when you're on an instrument training flight with your student. So the next logical step would be, let's load a procedure. So I'll hit the procedure button, and it tells me my origin was at International, and my destination is at Double Eagle. Now I have the choice here of loading. If I was just getting ready to leave, I could load a departure or an approach. For instance, I just left, I've got an in-flight emergency, I need to get an approach loaded. This is a great way to go to the origin airport, hit approach, and it'll get you, you modify it and put it in there. But we'll go back. Okay, I'm going to go back to procedure. And we're a little close for arrivals, but they're available. These are arrivals at Double Eagle. And you pick the arrival that you want, Curly 2, Frio, the Lavin 3, the Mira 2, whichever one that you wanted to do. And then, let's say if I pick the Frio 3, then I would look at what the transition would be. And I get to choose, and there's only two here, SUSPend and that one. If I was looking at the Mira 2, then I could go to Chisholm or Truth and Consequences, Texaco, and what have you. So those are there. But we're not really going to do one of those because we're already too close. But I hit the back button. I hope you saw that. I'm going to go here now and go to the approach side. And down the right-hand side, when we're in this function, you'll see a bunch of soft keys. And you'll see GPS, ILS, localizer, VOR, and NDB. Those are the types of approaches. Now, we don't have a VOR approach for Double Eagle, so nothing's going to come up for that. You'd think that if you hit localizer, you'd get something, but the ILS to Double Eagle is an ILS. It's not a localizer, and this would be for an airport that just had a localizer only. I could pick the ILS right there, and when I do that, it highlights it up here, and then to pick the initial approach fix or vectors, I have to move the back knob and then go through and pick whichever one I want. So I've got Albuquerque, I've got vectors, I've got Dudley. Those are the ones for the ILS. If I go to GPS, I have the GPS to 22. Vectors is offered because usually that's what you get in the actual environment. Or I can go to Albuquerque to start it, or I can go to FESCO, or I can go to Freehold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the GPS 22, and I'm going to use FESCO as my initial approach fix. Okay? Now, what I've done is I've taken the flight plan, or I shouldn't say I've taken it. The flight plan, the old one's still flying the airplane. That's one here, present position direct to Double Eagle. Now, I wanted to put an approach in here, and nothing's going to happen unless I come down here and execute this. When you mess with the flight plans, or you mess with flight plan 0, you're not really messing with the flight plan that's flying the airplane. When you do this, you're working on a copy. And you can do whatever you want to the copy, and nothing's going to happen to the airplane as far as if it's in an autopilot or something like that. Nothing's going to happen to it. When you're ready to use that flight plan, then you would execute it. And in order to do that, the C kind of reminds me, if that execute is available at this point, it reminds me that I am in fact working on a copy of the flight plan. Okay? And so what I'm going to do here, it's a little bit confused on how it's supposed to get to FESCO, so I'm going to get rid of that discontinuity just by clearing it, and it's basically giving me a direct course. Now, I want to execute the flight plan. If I tried to go direct to any of these waypoints, it wouldn't work because it's not the active flight plan. And that's one of the main frustrations that you'll have with this. But it's very much like an FMS. So if I'm going to execute it now, it's going to come up and prompt me and say, are you sure you want to do this? And I'll say, yeah, I'm sure. I'll hit the enter key. And now, if I go back to the map, I'm still going direct to the airport. Now, the flight plan's in there. I hit flight plan, and sure enough, it's there, but I haven't gone anywhere. So I'm going to bring the cursor down here, and I'm going to say, I'm ready to go to FESCO, the initial. And now I can go direct to it. And I want to go direct to it without messing with my flight plan. I don't want to hold there, and I don't want to set it as the new destination. I want to go to it. And sure enough, present position now, and I'm headed to FESCO. And we should get a turn here any moment now. The new TSO, I believe it's 146, is a little bit different than the original one. I think it's 143 or 142 when we first had approach certified GPSs. This particular GPS, and as we get to it, you'll be able to see a little bit better. This particular GPS doesn't cross the fix one time and then come back in and enter the suspend mode. The Garmin, if you head toward FESCO for the initial turn, you'll cross FESCO, it would suspend, and then when you were established inbound, it would come out of suspend and would start going waypoint to waypoint again. With the King unit, as you approach that particular waypoint, you'd be prompted to go into OBS mode. You'd enter OBS mode, do your turn, and crossing back inbound, you take it out. This one does it quite a bit differently. I'm going to kick our speed up here just a little bit so we don't waste a lot of our time. So let's go down here and spiff things up a little bit. Go to 280 knots, that ought to work. Okay. And so we're supposed to be going present position direct to FESCO. Flight plan, FESCO, direct. Whoops, let's clear out of here. There we go. Direct. And now we're headed direct to FESCO. Okay. So it says present position, direct to FESCO with one turn and holding. I'm just coming in here just a little bit. Now, that's on a 5-mile scale. You notice that this box actually draws curves. I do believe I have auto track on, maybe not. Initiate auto. Okay, yeah. Initiating auto track. Okay. So I'll clear the exit out of that, and now it's doing what it was. Wonder what was on there for a minute. But now we are in auto track mode. And it's going to go direct to FESCO. Okay. 8 miles away, the bearing's 106, minute 51, 280 knots. Believe it or not, the other thing that you're seeing here is an extension of the runway at Double Eagle, even out this far. Now, if you have GPSS steering off this unit into your autopilot, then the aircraft will fly the purple line and the aircraft will fly the purple dash line. And we'll talk about those here in just a second. As we start to finally head to FESCO, now that I got it figured out, you can now see what we're doing. You'll see a white holding pattern here. That is the normal hold off the missed approach. If you're going to do another hold, you'll see an even larger pattern, and that'll be based on your speed. It actually computes the speed. And there it is right there, about 3 miles, and that's how big this holding pattern is going to be at my present speed, which is fairly significant if you think about it. If I went down here to the speed button and took it down a notch, you'd see that. See how much smaller it got. So that is actually a speed compensated holding pattern. Now this is one of those, there you go, it does prompt you. I was going to say there for a second, this was getting to be one of those dealer choice kind of between a direct and a parallel, but here we go. Now as we cross, the unit's going to go into suspend. You see the little suspend window right here. We also have turn anticipation. Our CDI is set to GPS, which is fine, and this is also what the external CDI would be doing. I'll zip in here just a little bit for you. Okay, we've done our parallel, we're entering our hold. Now, we went to suspend mode. Okay, it tells us we're in a parallel entry, at FESCO is the initial, and you can see that we have a flashing message. In this case, the reason we have it is because we aren't feeding encoder information into the unit, and so it would have you enter it manually. Alright, to get out of this, you can do this all day long and it won't go anywhere, so you'll come back up to your map button to escape. I'd make it go faster, but we're dealing with 1 minute hold, so it's going to take the same amount of time regardless of what we do. Now, the dash line is the track for the hold. Okay? If you come over here, you'll see the CDI, the course line itself start to move off. This line here maintains its reference to the leg and not the holding pattern. But the autopilot outputs are taken off of this one, so this box will actually fly a holding pattern for you. You notice it's also doing the inbound course intercept. Okay, now let's take a look at what happened here. We were entering the holding pattern, or entering the hold. Now it shows us an inbound course at 215 with, and you can see a little right arrow right there, with a right turn at FESCO, which is the initial approach fix. Now, if you wanted to proceed inbound at this point, you could press the suspend button here and it would intercept the course inbound. Left alone, what's going to happen is it's going to go ahead and go one more time around the holding pattern. You can see the course coming in right here. Gives your instructions right turn to 035 in 5 seconds. Now the Garmin 430-530 on the second cross of the fix would have let you proceed inbound. This wants to take you around one more time. And because I value your time, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the tape till we get a little bit closer to the inbound leg. Okay, we've started our instructions, or we're starting to get our instructions back from the GPS. Right turn to 215 inbound for this. There's something else different about this particular TSO. If you recall, on the 89 and the 94 and the 430 and the 530, which are all approach certified GPSs, the unit would switch from terminal mode, which is indicated down here, to approach mode 2 miles outside the final approach fix. This box is different. This box is going to start the transition and of course the CDI sensitivity as soon as the final approach fix becomes the active waypoint. And you'll see that here in just a second. We're still in suspend mode. We've got our once around the park thing here. And we're going to be established inbound in just a second. Now, we've done that, and it now shows our course is 215 direct to FESCO, and if you notice, it automatically came out of suspend mode. You didn't have to do anything. I'll go back and remind you, if you're going to do the enter the hold and proceed inbound on the procedure turn on the first turn, you can advance it to this mode once you're established inbound by physically depressing the suspend button. Now as we cross the fix here at FESCO, right here, you're going to see this go to the approach mode. Nice little countdown timer. Okay, and here we go. If you look, you've seen that it goes to approach mode right there. It now shows Dudley as the next fix inbound. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this and let it get a little bit further along. Okay, we've just crossed Dudley, and what I wanted to show you here, in the other units, the unit would go to the missed approach point and then enter the suspend mode. In this box, the unit switches to suspend mode as soon as the missed approach point becomes active. Now there's some interesting differences here. This box knows the altitude at which you should begin your turn. In other words, we're all familiar with the climb to 6,500 feet, then a climbing right-hand turn back to FESCO to hold. If you are flying and you reach the missed approach point and you are less than 6,500 feet, then the box will not sequence you to the missed approach track until you get to 6,500 feet. We're going to show you a little deal here when we get a little closer to the airport. Now what I can do here is I'm going to go ahead and unsuspend it right there. And as we get, you can see coming down the top of the screen now is the airport symbol. Now a little bit beyond that, you're going to see another symbol. That's going to be another little dot that's coming up here. And that's the distance that the box estimates it will take you to climb at 500 feet per minute to reach the altitude at which you would begin the procedure turn or the missed approach procedure. So you're going to see it come into view here. And there it is at the top right there. So right here is the airport missed approach point, and this circle that's now just coming down underneath is the point where the turn would normally begin. Now I don't have a way to adjust the altitude. I've got it set at 7,000 to allow it to sequence. If I didn't have it, if I had it below 6,500 feet, it would continue to fly the aircraft runway headed. But because I have set it for 7,000 feet, once we cross Double Eagle, you're going to see this jump down a little bit, and it's going to highlight this as the active leg. And there it is right there. So your autopilot would actually receive course steering on this. It's not given. I don't believe the installations have vertical autopilot inputs at this point. But because it assumes that you have reached the altitude where it's appropriate to start the missed approach procedure, it will start providing inputs to the autopilot to take you back there. Now if you'll notice down here in the bottom, it's present position, direct to FESCO, and hold, and then it says manual. And what that manual means is you're going to have to give it someplace else to go. And it'll sit there, if you have the autopilot hooked up with GPS steering, it'll continue to do circles until you run out of fuel. Okay, so we've reached that point, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select a different procedure. So I go to Procedure, and I can go to Approach, and I can say, you know, I think I'd like to do the ILS. So I'm going to go to the ILS, and there's the ILS to 2.2. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to pick Dudley as my fix. I'm going to hit Enter. Now, you notice it's told me I'm working with a copy. Okay? I'm working with a copy, and I'm going to have to execute it to make it work. And this is one of the things that will drive you nuts. So I'll hit Execute, and it'll say, do you want to replace it? And I'll say yes. And then it says, you're not supposed to use the GPS for an ILS approach. And I said, okay, I believe that's true. And I'm going back to the map. Now it's asking me for a message. It says, your VOR receiver should be tuned to 110.1 for the approach. The Garmin will load it for you in the standby. The King with Quick Tune will load it for you in the standby. This one will not do that, but it will remind you. So we don't have it over there, so I'm going to have to take some actions to fix that. So I go to the map function, and first I want to get a leg defined here. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go direct to Dudley. Alright, so I'll go direct to Dudley and go direct. And now I'm headed back direct to Dudley to start this, and it shows me that I'm direct to Dudley for the procedure turn. Now if you remember how to do this, I'm going to come over here to the VOR. I'm going to go to the recall list, and I'm going to go to 110.1. Sounds reasonable. Now I can set it either to the active or the standby. In this case, I'll set it to the standby and then flip it up here because I want to keep my 113.2 there, and I'll leave that in monitor function, and that'll give me a cross radial fix. Doesn't work in the simulator mode, but this would tell me when I got to the 11-degree radial. So I'm going to go back and get out of the comm mode, and now we are headed back toward Dudley for the procedure turn. I'll back this up here just a little bit to give you an idea what we're doing. The rest of the same functions apply. It would give us course guidance, take us out from Dudley. You can see the holding pattern that's depicted at Dudley for the missed approach procedure right here. But it would take us out, we'll do our procedure turn, and then come back in. For the ILS, the missed approach holding procedure is the same. It is not going to change your CDI for you like the Garmin 430 and 530 does. So these are tasks that a lot of folks may not be used to taking on for themselves. Obviously we have no signal for the localizer, so we'll have a 5 condition. Okay, I'm going to pause it here, and we're going to let it speed along a little bit, and then we'll be back in a second. Now as we continue along, one of the things I like to point out is you'll see a yellow arc up here, and that's your 10-mile radius ring or protected area for staying 10 miles within the particular fix, whatever's being used. So that's what the yellow line is. Again, you can see that the CDI down here is showing the relationship with the course line. This is the airplane right here. If you're wondering what this is the extended centerline for runway 35. So it manages to keep you inside bullet distance anyway. Now this is an ILS, so you're supposed to be using the ILS frequency, the localizer frequency, to drive your indicator. You can see that Dudley is now highlighted as the destination waypoint. This is the final approach fix, and if you remember when we were doing the GPS approaches, that the box switched to approach mode. And that hasn't happened here. So if you fail to switch then, you fail to switch your CDI over here, then you're not going to have the accuracy that you should have as far as what's like. You're going to have be plus or minus a mile instead of plus or minus 200 feet or so. Sounds like that'd be a great question for a follow-up written test, doesn't it? Okay, well what we're going to do here, the rest of this approach follows through just like the GPS approach as far as guidance for the missed approach procedure and steering and sequencing of the waypoints and so on. Make sure we get to Dudley here. And again, you can see the distance between Double Eagle and the circle up there, which indicates where you would actually be at this present speed and 500 feet per minute, what point you'd be at when you started your turn back. Now you notice it did go into suspend. We're still in terminal mode, but we went into suspend. We have a message, and it says the CDI should be set to the ILS. Notice it didn't do it for you. Okay, and still have to come over here to get it back to the map page. Okay, and then if I wanted it to proceed after we got there automatically, then we've got it set up to do that. Okay, I'm going to do a little something here. I'm going to set you up for one more approach. That'll take care of that part, and then we'll show you a little bit about the flight planning. Okay, here we are coming up to a wash intersection. I'm going to go ahead and go direct to it as a hold. And I'm going to have the inbound be 159, and we'll do 2-minute turns, okay? And sure enough, drew it for me. It's going to tell me how to enter the hold, and it'll sit here and do this until we get done. I've slowed us back down to 120 knots. The next fun one to do is going to be the DME arc. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, there goes the teardrop hold, so we're okay there. It should highlight. I'm going to come over here, got the teardrop, and I want to go, I'm going to use the nearest function. I'm going to go nearest airport. I'm going to go to Albuquerque. I'm going to go direct to, and I'm going to go and make it my destination. Then we'll hit yes for enter. Okay, and now it's showing me going there. Okay, I can come over here to flight plan or procedure. I'll go to procedure, go to approach. I'm going to go to VOR, and it says VOR GPS runway 8. And this time I'm going to go for an arc. Okay, and because I'm on the north side, I'm going to use AugMesh, and I'm going to use that. Now remember, I'm dealing with a copy, so I have to, see the C for it, I have to execute it to make it work, and it's going to ask me if I want to replace what I got. So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go back to the map page. And sure enough, there's my DME arc as it comes along. So the question becomes, I'm still going direct to Albuquerque, and I want to pick up this arc. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go to fly the leg. First thing I want to do is go to AugMesh, and go direct to AugMesh first. And because I'm in the active flight plan, I don't have to do any of that execute business. Now, it's stupid to go that way. So what I want to do is I want to fly this leg. I want to intercept the arc. So I'm going to come over here and set the end of the arc, and then I'm going to hit, which is DMBIC or whatever it is, and hit the fly leg mode. Now when I do that, the unit's going to take me directly to the arc. But there is a catch. Let me take it back to the VOR for a second. Let's see if I can get back up here. I may not be able to do this. I'm going to go direct to Albuquerque. If I have time, I hope I don't have it going too fast. So we're going direct to Albuquerque. And it has us going direct to the VOR. The unit will allow you to fly an arc as long as you're within 4 miles of the arc, which is the protected airspace. So we're now 13.7 from the final approach fix from Albuquerque. And I'm going to try to go back here and fly the arc again, okay, and go direct and fly the leg. So it's going to take me to the arc and allow me to fly it this time. The first time we did this, we thought that it was going to take us direct to MIJBIC, or DMBIC, or whatever it is. But it will computer present position to the arc and do the intercept for you. And you'll see that here in just a second. If you try to do it too far out, it's going to take you to the beginning. If you set the end of the arc as the initial approach fix and you're more than 4 miles out, it'll take you there. If you set it for the leg and you're more than 4 miles out, it'll take you to that turn point, that intermediate fix. But if you're within 4 miles, it appears that it's going to bring you into the arc and let you fly the arc. those are pretty much most of the approach tricks. The next thing that's kind of interesting, and we're just going to let this fly for a little bit, is, and this is one of the unique features, and this is why people think this is an awful lot like a flight management system. I'm going to go to the flight plan mode. I want to make a new flight plan, but nowhere does it tell me that I have to punch the back button to do that, but here we go. And I want to make a new one. These are the two that are here right now, and I want to make a new one. So I'm going to hit the new button, and I'm going to start at double eagle, just because I like to start at double eagle. Okay, there's double eagle up here at the top. You see it's the origin. And when I punch the enter button, it's going to change to the destination right away. There you go. Now, instead of going close this time, I'm going to go someplace with a little distance to it. So I'm going to go to Midland, which is MAF. Okay, that's my destination. And it's asking me, it's kind of like, gee, you want to go from double eagle to Midland, and then this big yellow continuity there is just yellow discontinuities there. It says, well, how do you want to do that? Well, if I come up here and clear that, then it tells me that my direct course is 119 degrees, which is GPS direct, which most of us would fly if everything will work for us. But I'm expecting to get airway work today, so as I come up from double eagle, it offers me a waypoint. So I'm going to come up here and select waypoint, and I'm going to put the Albuquerque VOR in here, because you know Albuquerque has got an awful lot of airways that go through it. So there's Albuquerque, and I'll put that in there. And it tells me that it's 6.2 miles, and the bearing is 177 degrees. I've gotten to that point, and now I need to work. This is this really cool part. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to punch the airway button. Now looky here. From Albuquerque, these are all the airways that cross Albuquerque. So there's J13, that's one of them there. I'll go here. Okay, these are listed some more. There's the high altitude. Now we're coming up on the low altitude. There's some more of them. A lot of airways go through here. But I happen to know that Victor 68 heads down toward Midland. So I'm going to hit Victor 68, and it says, okay, we can do that. And in alphabetical order, it's going to list all of the waypoints on Victor 68. So I'm just going to go direct to the VOR. So I'm just going to go, there it is, I missed it. There's Midland VOR, and that's what I want to use in my flight plan. And so now I've got all the waypoints shown, and I get down to there and I have a discontinuity, so I'll clear that, and it tells me essentially everything is right here. Now obviously this is a lot of waypoints to read, and there's a collapse and expand. So there's a simple flight plan, which is double eagle to Albuquerque, Victor 68 to Midland, and then direct to the Midland Airport. If I want to see all the individual waypoints there, I can hit the expand button, and this thing will take me through every intersection, every navigation aid that's on there. And of course, if I'm flying that flight plan, I can actually go direct to any of those waypoints that are in the active flight plan at any time. Or I can bring up a copy and delete waypoints or whatever I want to do. So I'll go back here, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save that flight plan. And so now it shows up here. I've got 3 flight plans. I've got Albuquerque, I've got to Santa Fe, Albuquerque to Midland, and Albuquerque. So right now, while we were doing all of this, we were still flying our DME ARC into Albuquerque International. Okay. Well, see if I can make this part work. That's pretty much all we really needed to talk about or address today. But I'm going to come over here. This turn's complete, and I want to come over to flight plan, and I want to activate the Midland flight plan. And so execute's up here as an option. So I'm going to hit execute. And it says, do you want to do that? And I said, yes, I certainly do. Okay. Going up back here, we do have a message. The message is the altimeter thing because of the approach business. And if I look down here, I executed my new flight plan, so it shows me double eagle to Albuquerque to Bian. Okay. And it looks like I'm probably going to get there beforehand, but I can come in here and activate a leg of that flight plan if I want to. So I can come over here and say fly a leg, and the leg I want to fly is the one Albuquerque to Bian, and I think I can hit fly a leg, and what it did at that point is it activated activated that leg from Albuquerque to Vienna intersection. You can see it in purple right there, and it's going to you can use that for intercepting a particular leg on an airway. Very, very, very powerful piece of equipment, to say the least. And we've covered pretty much all of the features, but not every single feature that's available in this GPS. This doesn't constitute adequate training to go jump in the airplane and go fly on instruments, obviously. And I'm hoping that it'll generate some questions. There's a lot of neat things in here that you can do. I hope this has taught you a little bit about it. And feel free to play it back and go back over it again. And if you find that I've messed up, please let me know, because I'll be happy to go back and try to do this all over again. In the meantime, happy flying.